Good morning. Milan here again. I don't even remember what episode this is. Maybe number 5 in probably as many years. I recorded an episode at the beginning of this year, and I mean, the intention was there, but my dad got sick and has been in the hospital since end of March. So we've been spending a lot of time there, the whole family, and I'm still working full-time shift work. So time to record an episode has been a little slim. There has been a lot of knitting time since my dad's been in the hospital because we spend usually a good 6 or 7 hours there. So that's a lot of knitting time, and he sleeps enough. So I've gotten a lot of knitting done. So we'll start with the woolly check-in, what I'm wearing. So this is the Dingley Dill pullover by Isabel Kramer. It's a little t-shirt. I was initially going to use this yarn. It's the Pearl Soho linen quill. I was going to use this yarn to make the half and half triangle wrap, but I decided to make 2 garments out of it instead because I had enough yarn. It required 3 skeins of 2 colors, so that's 6 skeins. So when you do the math, there's a lot of yarn in there, and I felt like I should be using it for garments instead of a big shawl, essentially. So I bought some Knit Picks palette and made the shawl out of that instead. And I made 2 sweaters out of this linen quill yarn. So I really like the design of this. I was a bit worried that, like when you're making something that has a different construction than you're used to, you're like, where is this gonna go? So I really like the shoulder shaping on this, and then it just opens up for the arms. So this is kind of a flowy little t-shirt. I just finished it. I literally bound off earlier this week, wove in the ends and blocked it. So I might wear it to the hospital today. So I'm headed there a little bit later. It's almost 10 a.m. and I usually go for around 11. So I'm gonna try and get through this as fast as I can so that you guys aren't bored and I'm on time. So the first project, I think I talked about it in my last episode where, I said it was blocking. So this is my cumulus blouse. It's a petite knits pattern. I dyed the yarn myself. It's a bit wrinkly because it's been in my cupboard for most of the summer because it's been too hot, but I kind of really love the color and I really love the finishing on this. It's all I-cord, and I found a way to trying to find so I think this is right here is the join, and I found a way to graft it together so that you don't have like the break in the I-cord. So that was pretty fun. Hand dyed my own yarn for that. Petite knit, the cumulus blouse. I think lots of people have made this. So I finally made mine, which is lovely. The next one I spoke about, that because I had just bought this yarn. Actually, I hadn't just bought it. I had this yarn in my stash and I'd been wanting to make the Retour sweater by Fiber Tales. So I finally got to make that. And this brioche stitch, holy cow, was it ever addictive. I am so in love with, like how to do the increases and stuff. It's so cool. I might have enough yarn even to make another sweater if it's not as big or bulky as this one. I think because I had 6 skeins of the darker charcoal, and it's her yarn. It's I had this. I kind of did this dance in the last episode where I couldn't remember what kind of yarn this was, but it's in my last episode, and I'll link all my projects on my Ravelry page so you know what it is. So I had 6 skeins of this dark charcoal and 2 skeins of the light gray. And I have a whole skein of the light gray plus a decent chunk of the first skein that I use. And I have 2 full skeins of the dark and most of the 3rd skein of the dark. So I could probably make another sweater. I won't be making this one again because I just want to make something different. But isn't it gorgeous? Oh, I love this. So squishy. Everybody says that brioche is squishy. They're not kidding. So, the next one, I'll bring it back. The next item I made is the Bailey hat. This is a Jane Richmond. She's a Canadian designer. It's been in my queue forever. And I had some leftover yarn from Belfast Mini Meals when I went to PEI. My friend Nicola had purchased some of this yarn for me to make her a hat, and I had some left over, so I made this pretty cool hat. Love it. It's Belfast Mini Meals worsted superwash. Yeah, so that's kind of a fun new hat. I haven't really worn it because I knit it pretty late in the season, or like pretty late in the spring. So I haven't had a chance to wear it yet, so that's gonna be fun. The Paint Pale pullover is the next item on the list, and that's a Pearl Soho pattern. And that's the other garment I used my linen quill to make. So it's one of their patterns. It was pretty quick, like it's long because it's fingering weight, but it's a pretty easy sweater. Also has, well, it didn't have raglan shaping originally, so I modified it because the way the fit was, I think it goes up, it went up like this and then out like this. So the shaping was all in the shoulder and it looked ridiculous on me. So I ripped it back to the underarms and then I just did the raglan shaping, but it's a pretty fun little sweater. The next one I made, my ranunculus, finally. I made a ranunculus. I ordered some Knit Picks palette for this, and I had purchased the masala color. It looked kind of like a deep orange, almost like a deeper than pumpkin. The masala, almost like a reddish orange. But when I got it, it was like Halloween orange, and I'm like, I'm not about this color. So I over-dyed it, and I think it turned out pretty cool. I really like the color. I just over-dyed it in my kitchen. And then I made this little t-shirt. It's a bit oversized, but I kind of like it. I might make another one of these. It was so fun and quick because it's 2 strands held together. So it went by really fast. And I did the kind of the closed neckline because I didn't like the overly big neckline. And then my next one, see, I have a list because like I have a really long list of I have this really long list of items to show you guys. The next thing I made is the Grow shawl, and that's another Fiber Tales pattern. I'm all about the Fiber Tales patterns these days. And it's this giant shawl with the braid. I was so obsessed with making these braids and these little bauble flowers. Aren't they cute? So instead of, I think it called for Nutidin, the kind of like roving yarn, but frankly, I had some of this in my stash. It's Briggs & Little roving instead. And the plates are kind of round with 5 strands together. So I literally sat there and divided each plate. I think I went through maybe 3 plates. Initially, the needle size called for in the pattern, combined with this yarn like held together, 2 strands held together, was just so stiff that I didn't love it. And it was kind of small. And so I ripped it all out and I re-knit it with larger needles, and it turned out enormous and cozy and beautiful. And these braids, like, come on. So obsessed. I loved making this shawl. And I love wearing it. It's a little bit, it's rustic. It's rustic, but it's so fun. It was so fun to make, and it's so fun to wear. Just chuck it on. It's perfect. So my next finished object was the Tuku Honey Socks by Andrew Mowry. The first pair that I made, I gifted. They were for my friend's partner. She loved them. I thought they were a little bit baggy on her. Maybe she has like super skinny feet because I made them to fit me and I found them a little bit bulky, but that's okay. They were made out of just a commercial yarn. They turned out beautiful, and I love the pattern so much that I ended up making another pair. And I actually bought the tuku sock wool. And this is the pair that I finished for me. This yarn is really rustic. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. They've been finished for a long time. I just haven't worn them yet because they're pretty thick and it's still summer. So it's hot, and I only wear socks literally in my uniform boots. So I figured I would just hang on to these until it's cold enough to need them. But they're beautiful in that yarn. It's not the yarn that was called for in the pattern, and I had a really hard time adjusting my gauge. I must have started these socks 10 times, and I was making them toe up. So I'd put them on my toe. They were either really baggy or they were really tight. So I made them over and over and over again until I got it just right, and then they were okay. So that's the Tuku Honey socks by Andrew Mowry. Then I made a lot of sweaters this year. I don't know why. It's just, I had the yarn and I just went to town because I had lots of knitting time at the hospital. So this is the Silverling by Jennifer Steingass. And this again is some Belfast Mini Mills yarn that I got when I was in PEI in August last year. So about this time last year, I was there, and every time I go to PEI, I buy yarn. So this is the Silverling sweater. It's been in my queue for some time, and I finally had some yarn to make it with. And I think it turned out really beautiful. I've been making all my sweaters really big because I'm at an age and a weight where I just really don't want anything that's tight. So I've been making everything oversized, which is, it's fine. Just takes up more yarn. The next sweater, another sweater, y'all, is the Strathcona by Tara Lynn Morrison. Super easy, chunky knit. And it's out of Chunky Lopi. So I had this in my stash and I was like, hey, what can I do with this? It's a super simple, I don't know, it probably took me like 4 days to make this, It's super plain. That is it. Just a raglan, nothing fancy, but it fits really fun. It's oversized and it has like the bulky sleeves, and every time I make a sweater like that, my girlfriends are like, oh my God, I want one. So I might have some more of those on my needles at some point. In my last episode, I was talking about the Shirley Bryan deconstructed fade socks that I was knitting. So I finally finished these. They were kind of a slog, right? Because I wanted to use as much of the yarn as I possibly could. So I just made them super long. And they look amazing on. I'm just not super thrilled with the black heel I used, like the black yarn I used for the heel. But I really just didn't want to disturb the gradient in these socks. And, it was the only contrasting yarn that I had that would look good, because I had a bunch of other colors, but nothing solid or neutral. So I just popped in a black afterthought heel. I hate making afterthought heels. It's really not fun for me. So, but these socks still turned out really nice. I'm still dying to figure out how she dyes these gradient skeins. It has to be a double knit sock blank. I can't understand in my brain how it's possible to do it any other way. So someday I may figure it out. The next pair of socks was the Lilibet socks by Becky Norman. She's Beck's Knits, I think, her podcast. She initially started with the Bird Street UK team. They had their little podcast and she was on there with her sister Claire and John. But I think she branched out on her own and now she has her own podcast. So she designed these little socks and I thought they were adorable, but they were a shorty sock and I'm not a shorty sock person. I like my socks too, mostly because I wear them in my work boots and my work boots are like, you know, over the ankle type boots. So I want them to be, my socks to be higher than the boots. So I made them for my sister out of some hand-dyed yarn that I had been in my stash forever. And they turned out really cute. So I decided I was gonna make a pair for myself, but I'll show you those later because they're actually in progress. Then the Tuku honey socks, I made those. That was the second pair. And then the half and half triangle shawl wrap, I ended up making out of, also initially I think, how did I do that? I think I had initially purchased the black and then the masala, but it would have been way too like Halloweeny. So I overdyed the orange and made the ranunculus. And then I ordered just this forest green one, and it was long to knit. You know, that's a lot of garter stitch. I love garter, but this was like super annoying at the end because it's really big. Here, I'll show you. So it's rather large, right? Imagine all this garter. It was long and, you know, boring, but it was great hospital knitting. I could pop on an audiobook when my dad was sleeping and just knit away. The nurses get a kick out of all this stuff I bring, eh? So what are you knitting today? So finished that one recently. The next is, Whiskey Clone. I call them my Whiskey Clone socks because that's the colorway name. It's a Whiskey Clone by Mud Punch. She's a hand dyer out of BC in Canada. And I just fell in love with this yarn and had to have it. I swore I wouldn't buy any yarn for a long time because my stash is substantial. And I just want to use as much of it as I can. And I have a ton of sock yarn, right? Because you find a fingering weight yarn that you love and you buy one thinking, hey, I'll just make a pair of socks or a hat or something, right? And then you end up with all this fingering weight single skein, so you can't really make anything substantial. So you end up making a lot of socks. So my son has a lot of socks too, and my sister has a lot of socks. But I just fell in love with this color in Chantels Stories. So I went to her shop update and bought this colorway. And I literally had like tiny little nuggets of each skein. I think I divided the skein up myself and made two little mini cakes and then just knit them toe up until I ran out of yarn, or until I was like satisfied with where the color was finishing. I did do some calf increases and I needed to. It was, they're long enough that they do hit the calf. So I love these. I have another skein of her yarn and I can't wait to dip into that. So they match pretty much exactly because I made my cakes so that they would match. Sometimes I'm OCD about matching socks and sometimes I just don't care. It depends on the day. This was my next knit. And then I have the Bennett Sister Shawl by Lindsay Fowler. I had a couple of skeins of Ushitita yarn that I had purchased in Amsterdam when I was there the first time in 2018. So I took two of those out. This was one of them. I can't remember what the colorway name is, but it's a bluey, some blue with some rust and maybe some navy. I don't know. It's mostly, yeah, a light blue with a navy and some rust orange, a little bit of brown. And then when I hit the other, I still have to like clip my ends. When I hit the other skein, it was like really brown and yellow, and I did not love it with this blue. So I went stash diving and found this. It was a fingering weight singles, mostly fingering weight. It's a little slubby, which is kind of fun. There's these little nubbins everywhere, but it's pure cashmere. My friend Michelle spun this for me ages ago because we used to go to the fleece festivals together, and I bought this before I even started spinning, or maybe I was just beginning to spin and I was too chicken to spin cashmere, so I left it for her and she spun it for me. And I had enough to finish up this shawl. So I can't wait to wear this. I literally just cast off like the other day. So I have to weave in my 2 tails, and I wove in as I was going on the triangle tip. So love this yarn. You can go see my friend Michelle's vlogs on YouTube. She is Au Fil des Jours. I'll try to remember to link it below. She has a couple episodes. She's multi-craftual, or I don't even what you want to call that. She spins. I spin because of her. She's a gardener extraordinaire, I guess. I just think of all the work that she has and I just get really overwhelmed. Anyway, you can go see her makes over on her channel, Au Fil des Jours. So that's pretty much all for the finished objects. Earlier this summer, I ended up taking some time for myself and went to a natural dye workshop. It was to dye fabric, but I bought all these little tails of yarn, different kinds of yarn, different fibers, to dye naturally with, you know, leaves and flowers and stuff like that. So I was kind of inspired when I got home, and I picked up my CSA and had some beet greens. So I ended up dyeing this, it's probably 75-25 superwash merino nylon. And it turned out this like beautiful greeny yellow. And I decided I was gonna knit the Lilibet socks. So that's the ones I made for my sister, the little shorties. And I decided to make a full length version for myself. And look at these little lace. They're so adorable. I had to make this pattern more than once. So that's what is on my needles right now. I don't have any big projects on my needles right now because I finished this sweater, this t-shirt, and I'm not sure what to cast on next. So I popped these on the needles, and that's what I'll be working on at the hospital for the next couple of days. My son came home with his friend Simon, who's from France, and he's been bugging for some socks for a while. So I met him when I was, when Jacob and I were traveling last year in Europe. And when he was in Canada working with my son, he just always loved Jacob's socks because I make my kid lots of hand-knit socks. So Simon has been bugging for some hand-knit socks for a while. So I think I'll probably cast some on in the near future. I am also contemplating making an antler hat by the Tin Can Knits. It's a free pattern out of some leftover. So this is the leftover yarn from my Silverling sweater. It's worsted, and not that I need another hat. I think I probably have, I literally have 2 piles. I have a shelf that's just designated for my knitting stuff. Maybe I'll pop in a picture after. And I have a shelf of hats, and it's like a pretty substantial shelf. And there are 2 stacks of hats, and then in the middle I've jammed in like all these little headbands and stuff. So I don't need another hat, but what else am I gonna make with 1 skein of worsted yarn, right? Hats. I'm not a big cowl fan, so I don't know, we'll see. So that might end up on the needles at some point. And then my only other giant project is I've been spinning some yarn to make a sweater. So these are all my toilet paper rolls. Some people make balls. I guess I could have done that too, eh? But anyway, I am spinning yarn to make a sweater. It's called the Simple Something by Enkestrick, and it looks really beautiful and some hand spun. It's been in my queue for a while. So I decided to card some yarn. I don't know what the main color, like this creamy, well, it's not really creamy, it's kind of like a gray cream. I had 12 ounces of this fiber, and I really didn't know what to do with it. Yeah, it's more gray, I guess. And then I had 4 ounces of sari silk in a Ziploc bag. So I literally just blended them together. I wish I knew what the fiber was. And then I'm spinning it to make that beautiful sweater. So I have 3 of these nuggets left. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 of those toilet paper roll things done. Hopefully it should total up to 18 ounces, and I'm really hoping that that's going to be enough to make the sweater. It's a top down, I'm pretty sure. I hope it's the top down. If not, I'll have to modify it, or yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a top down. So, you know, I'll work the shoulders, and then I'll probably do a portion of the sleeves and then knit a little bit of the body, and then kind of try to figure out the yarn so that it's relatively, you know, so it's not like super cropped, or I don't have like little tiny sleeves. So I guess we'll see. Other than that, nothing much exciting has been going on for me because I'm still working, spending probably 2 days a week at the hospital. So that's where all the knitting comes in. I've also read / listened to, I think I'm up to 73 books for this year. I can't even remember all the books I read or listened to. It's kind of been my escape. I'm not a big TV watcher, although I did start watching Gilmore Girls again. That's kind of like a happy TV show, I guess. And haven't been out kayaking very much because the few days I have off, I'm either exhausted, or I need to cut the grass, or I need to do housework, laundry, dishes, whatever, or the weather is not great. And for kayaking, if it's too windy, it's not that much fun because the water's too rough. So I think I've been out 5 times this year, but I work this week, is my long week. I'll work Monday, Tuesday, and then I'll work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I'm off for 5 weeks. I can't wait. I've been doing that. I hoard a lot of my time, and then my birthday's at the end of this month, so I always book off my birthday around my birthday, and then I just stack days as I work, you know, stats or overtime or whatever time I accumulate over the course of the year. I stack around my birthday so that I have a big chunk of time off. So in 2020 was the first time I did that, and I had 63 days off. I think it was 9 weeks or something ridiculous. I vlogged about that because everybody said I was going to be really bored and, you know, probably looking forward to getting back to work, but I was not. Last year I had 5 or 6 weeks off again, and the kid and I went to Europe for 4 weeks. This year I'm going to stay put because of my dad, and put new windows in the house instead, which is costing me $1 billion. So no traveling for me this year. I think my friend Connie and I are going to go to Picton, to wine country, for a weekend and just go hang out there. There's a beautiful beach. If you've never been to Sandbanks, or if you're from the area, Sandbanks Beach is like, it's like the ocean. It's beautiful. So I'm gonna do that. I might, Lorelai, I might go see you because I have so much time off. I have a little conference in Barrie, Ontario, which is like in the GTA. Maybe I'll sneak over to the Fleece Festival in October. It used to be in Woodstock, but Michelle told me it's now in Paris. So maybe I'll go check that out. Not that I need any fiber at all. Oh, my AC just kicked on. So weird. Sorry for the noise. Oh, I did pretty good. I'm only at half an hour and I went through all those things. I hope I didn't rush, but I'll try to be back sooner this time so that I can, you know, only show maybe 2 or 3 things and talk about them more in detail, I guess. So that's about it for me. I'm gonna get ready and go to the hospital now. So hope you guys have a wonderful September. It's getting cool. I hate that the days are getting shorter, but I don't mind the cooler weather because it's, you know, you don't walk outside and start sweating instantly, and my hair is always this huge, and yeah, the cool weather's nice for sweaters, knitting, start taking out all the knitwear, the shawls. It's cozy. So go make something, and I'll talk to you soon, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Bye.